the end zone! Touchdown Bulldogs!
The Dogs win the GLIAC tournament title!
Well, that's how you get it started right there.
I want to give the teams and athletes the freedom to be creative.
I think that's something we rally around as a team. We're out there no matter what the weather is.
We just do a good job of eating it up and using it to our advantage no matter what.
I got a lot of pride in being a Bulldog. I think it's awesome.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
It is Behind the Bulldogs, Season 4, Episode 11. Myself, Joseph Nagy, and Brandon Worth sitting right across from me in the studio.
Ski.
Why? We have a great episode. We have a great episode for you today, despite Brandon's weird introduction. But we got a good episode, great guest, great interview. Just an all-around great episode.
We do, and I apologize for being unprofessional for 5 seconds. I've always wanted to do that. I'm not sure why. Shout out to Cedric Frierson if he's listening. He's got that stuck in my head half the time. But we do have a great show upcoming for you. Logan Stein of Ferris State Hockey stopping by to talk about...
Great interview.
Yeah, it's a fantastic interview talking about how his life is off the ice as well. Not too much, and obviously not going to get too much into the other podcasts.
Don't want to step on the toes.
Yeah,
there.
Of course. Which, I mean, right now, might as well promote them, right? You can check out Off the Ice, Ferris State Hockey exclusive podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more, as well as on Sunday 97.3. They do a great job, Brody and Beth, so you can learn more about the hockey team there. So we're not trying to step on their toes, but we want to give you guys the insight on hockey as well. Upcoming, a big matchup this weekend, Joe, especially. We'll get to previewing that here later on the show against the number 1 St. Thomas team in the CCHA, so that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just get right into the rundown, eh?
Absolutely. The Ferris State rundown, we will start all the way back November 22nd. That was last Wednesday. For those that forgot their days of the week, 71-68 loss to McKendree. It was a really tough game for men's basketball.
Oof.
Battled down to the wire. They were up on McKendree, I believe, at halftime. But especially you looked at how the Wildcats really just bought all the way back. And I think it was really a gritty game on both sides. And especially we hung close in that game. And especially for a lot of the physicality in that game. And especially the shots weren't necessarily as much fallen as they usually do in those situations. You know, there's a lot of opportunities that we could have maybe won that game. But the shots didn't fall. And that's just how basketball goes. But especially bouncing back the next night, or I should say the next game a few nights later, in dramatic fashion, Mr. Jack Ammerman, a buzzer beater over Lewis.
Sick replay, too.
Oh, my gosh.
And an electric call from Mr. Rob Bentley, too.
Absolutely, yeah. 89-87 win over the Flyers. Huge for the program, as my partner across the table would say. And I
think for the brand, really.
Absolutely. And I think especially that was a really big game for Jack, because that was really, I think, the first game he's really truly broke out into his scoring self. And I remember one year, Joe, I don't know I think if this might have been the game we went to together our freshman year.
Oh, yeah, just out of random? I remember that. Yeah, because he scored like 30 points or something like that?
When he was a Northwood Timberwolf against Ferris State. And now it comes all full circle. Now we get to see him dominate in the Bulldogs jersey.
Can you believe it, man?
It's so
what
cool.
a day.
So cool.
Love to see it.
But yeah, it's great to have him as high point, and obviously Delapo and those guys did really well. If you haven't listened to last week's podcast, talk to Ethan and Delapo about basketball, so you can check that out in the feed below. But especially for them, obviously a tough loss to a good McKendree team, but a really nice bounce back against a Lewis Flyer program that's always competitive and always gives us their best, especially at their place.
Yeah, for sure. It's big time, especially to see. I think this year, too, is just a special group of guys where we talked about it with Delapo and Ethan, where they brought in a lot of guys who have a lot of veteran leadership capabilities, and you got guys, too, who are young, who can fill up the rock and just really do some awesome stuff on the court. So I'm very much excited to see what this team does, especially, did we drop in rankings after that? I have not checked the rankings.
I'm not sure yet. I think that
I'll do some investigative work while you stall.
Yeah, of course. And we would have this normally all figured out, but apparently the Wi-Fi in our building is starting to go on the fritz. So I don't know if you guys are
The website is just taking a poop right now.
Yeah, I think there's so many fans that are tuning into all these episodes and finding out material that we're actually crashing the servers. So apologies to the IT department for all the mess that we've created. But yeah, we'll get to that here, especially later on with...
We dropped to 14.
Oh, okay.
After that one.
But you know who did move up to 7, Joe? The women's team.
Huge as well.
Who got a win on Wednesday against Spring Arbor. It was a really it was a very fascinating game because it ended up being very close. I think it was like 85-70. You're probably thinking, oh, it's double digits. But it was a really interesting game back and forth. There was a lot of fouls in that game, which certainly really just slowed the momentum down for us especially, but for both teams. I think there's a total of almost 45 fouls called in this game overall. And there was a lot of stoppages, but at any point of outside of that, we still shot the ball good enough. I think it wasn't our best night shooting the rock, but really, especially in the first half, they got on transition. They made a lot of plays, and I think especially from that first half performance, they looked very dominant. They fell a little bit off in the second half, but still, really good showing from Coach Westendorp's team, and they're going to be fired up and hungry. Unfortunately, they're going to have to wait till next week to put it on the hardwood because Grace Christian game canceled, but we'll get to that when we get to the Ferris State Sports Slate later on.
That is tough looks, but I think we're going to be pretty solid. This is also a team where we got people back. I mean, Caden Blanchard, after last year's injury sitting out, now she's finally getting back in. It's a perfect storm brewing, and I think we're going to be able to take over.
Absolutely. And before we get into the interview, as that's really all we have for the Ferris State Rundown. Not a lot going on this weekend. Hockey was off. Volleyball was off as well because now they're going to be in national tournament week.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
By the time we're recording this at 3 o'clock on Thursday, they play in 30 minutes.
Yes, it's going to be a very fun game there against Hillsdale. But before we get to the interview, all regional honors. Want to shout out some of our individual players. Ferris State Soccer, Catherine Welch, Lindsay Cole, all region honorees. So congratulations to those two individuals.
2 thumbs up.
As well as for volleyball, all region standouts, Olivia Henneman Delapi, Claire Nowicki, and Kaylee Mott, as well as all region in volleyball. So
I would clap, but the audio is going to be really bad.
That is true. Which also,
silent clap.
Yeah, silent clap. And also, big shout out for our boys over on the tennis squad. Benjamin Lord at Yonkapul, number 6 duo in the nation, number 2 in the region.
Those are killing it, dude.
They are crushing it in doubles. So shout out to tennis as well on that greatness that they are putting down.
I love how our school is just good, man. I love it.
Just dominant, man.
Feels good.
Feels real good. Feels real good. Real good. Anyway, we'll get to an interview. So without further ado,
let's shoot it on over to the interview.
Whoa. Before we get into the interview with Logan Stein, we want to take a moment and tell you guys about our sponsor for Behind the Bulldogs, which is the Car Center. Being the area's largest body shop means the Car Center gets your car back to you faster. When you need body work, request the best. Find the Car Center off Northland Drive in Rogers Heights and online at carcentermi.com. Now joining us here in studio, we got a Ferris State Hockey goaltender stopping by. Not only that, a Lone Ranger, first-time double podcast guest here, Logan Stein joining us. Logan, we won't ask you quite yet which show you like better, but first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Logan. I mean, first going on off the ice with Beth and Brody, very cool that you want to double dip a little bit. It's cool. So first question for you, we were talking a little bit before that we started recording, especially with the CCHA, how close it is this year. I mean, even if you go back to when it was the WCHA, this is the first time where, honestly, at the end of the year, it might be the difference between a few games from top to bottom. So what's that been like for, game to game with the team's mentality going to each week?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think we realize that every point's extremely valuable. I think every game you got to take as many points as you possibly can, because I think at the end of the year, your spots in the playoffs are going to be determined probably by 1 or 2 points, or win or loss, or win in overtime or loss in overtime. So I think every play matters, every game matters. So we just got to come ready to go.
Absolutely. And you guys obviously coming off of a little bit of a break now, starting to get back in the swing of things. Obviously, really good series up north in Houghton. Just talk about being able to beat the Huskies and especially just playing a dominant game in a really hard environment to play in that the MAC is.
Yeah, Michigan Tech, I mean, I think they've been probably one of the gold standards in CCHA for last 10, 15, 20 years. So I think for us going there and being able to get a win on Friday, and we would have loved to grab more points on Saturday, but we just kind of fell a little bit short. But I think for us, it was a big stepping stone going on the road into a hostile environment and for a team in the conference that's going to probably be up there in the standings at the end of the year. I think it was a good road weekend for us.
Absolutely. And I've noticed too, when you first came in, you're a senior now, you were a little bit more clean cut, a little bit more clean shaven. Now, I mean, you got the flow, you're rocking it, the lettuce is hanging out the bucket when you're playing. I mean, what's that kind of been leading to? Is it more of just kind of a style change, or what's the deal with the new look?
Yeah, so I get a haircut at E&M in town, and I went last May, and then the whole summer I didn't get a haircut, and so I kept it going until I actually got a haircut this Tuesday, but I didn't want it to get too short, so I just cut a little bit off, and then I've been growing out my mustache for November too. So got that going too.
Is that just a big time style statement you're trying to make between the pipes, or is that just going to be something you're going to roll out for the rest of the season?
I've been rolling the mustache out and the long hair out all year. I mean, I think this year, I'm going to roll with it this whole year. I kind of been the clean cut my sophomore and my junior year. So I guess senior year, I'm going to go a little bit less clean cut.
Oh, okay.
Maybe get the mullet for playoffs or something like that.
Absolutely. Maybe dyed hair or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. But kind of getting into a little bit, obviously you guys have St. Thomas upcoming this weekend. Really big homestand for you guys. St. Thomas, team that's at the top of the CCHA. Not many people probably predicted that at the beginning of the year, but what's your guys' mindset going into the St. Thomas weekend and trying to get 2 wins here at home?
Yeah, I mean, St. Thomas is a very good team. I think they're going to play really hard. They're really competitive. They obviously have a chip on their shoulder. They were maybe not where they wanted to be the past 2 years, but are clearly at the top of the standings this year. So I think for us, we got to play our game. And I think we're going to have to be heavy, physical, gritty, Bulldog hockey, surviving moments of the games and dominating moments of the games too. So I think that's what you're probably most likely going to see both games this weekend.
Absolutely. And when you look at pregame, we've talked to guys like Brad Merrick, the McKendree twins, Connor Fedoric. Superstitions are a big thing, kind of routines. We've heard that you're a guy who has a pretty specific schedule you gotta follow.
You're right.
You don't gotta go through step by step what you do, but like how do those habits kind of form? Is it just kind of a spring of the moment thing, or what goes on?
For me, I think like I have had probably the same routine like on a game day for years now. So it's like, breakfast in the morning, sleep in, come to practice, take a nap. Before the game, I do my same little stretches, my same little routine. I work on a little hand eye. I think you build on it as you get older in hockey because you play so many games, right? So I just build on what I like and what I think works. It's probably mostly in my head, but yeah, I think everyone just builds on it. Everyone has their own thing, and it's whatever works, honestly.
Yeah, and I think we were talking with one of the guys, and I think there was only one player that's allowed to hit your pads before. Is that true? Or there's one that's not allowed? I'm trying to remember the theory off the head. There was a crazy story behind it, though.
Yeah, so Blake Evanow, who's now graduated.
Yes, Blake, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah, he plays pro hockey in Atlanta now. And we used to stand next to each other right before we go out. And as soon as I walk up to go out, he'd always come up to my right pad and then he'd like baseball swing and smack it as hard as possible until he heard like a good crisp like smack, and then he would be like, okay, we're ready to go now.
That's crazy. Oh,
I was gonna say, I remember when I did sideline for the GLI last year, you got to start one day, and that happened. I was just like, interesting little move. I didn't expect that.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We've talked so much with superstitions with a lot of the other guys. Are you the most superstitious on the team, or is there somebody that even is one step above?
I've dialed it back probably in the past 2 years. I wouldn't say I'm the most, but I would say I'm top 5.
Okay. Okay.
Between 1 and 5, I could be anywhere between 1 and 5, but I don't pay attention to enough guys' routines because I'm already dialed into my own.
That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, there's guys who are up there too.
Yeah, I think we were talking with the McKendree twins, and they were talking about how they used to put on one side of the sock and the skate on it once before. You would obviously a lot of good people probably put both socks on and both shoes. It was almost one complete side and then the other complete side, which just seems kind of crazy. But
oh yeah,
I mean, I guess really going off of that question, like, why do you think hockey is such a superstitious sport? Because obviously you have the hot cold spells along with it, but it just seems like everybody in hockey just has these superstitions.
I think it's just part of the hockey culture, honestly. Like everybody, like in every sport, everyone wants to win, and I think you see superstitions in every sport. But I think hockey takes it to another level. Like I think like mentally, like hockey's such a mental game. Like there's so many decisions made on a shift to shift, minute by minute, second by second basis in hockey that like, I don't know, guys want to make sure their minds are right. So like, I feel like the superstitions help guys get their mind dialed in. And that's why I think a lot of guys use it.
All right. Right on.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at it, I mean, you're from Georgia. You're from, was it Suwanee, right?
Suwanee.
Yep. Sorry for the mispronunciation.
No worries.
I mean, that's a far ways away from Big Rapids. What kind of made you get drawn to Ferris State and Big Rapids? What was in that kind of thought process?
Yeah, so in 2012, I was watching the national title game when they were playing BC, and I was like, Ferris State, and then it had the little, in parentheses, Michigan, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I looked it up online, and then, I mean, for years before that and years after that, they were just a perennial powerhouse in what was the CCHA and the WCHA national tournament fairly regularly. Goaltenders were at the top of the national leaderboard at all times. And for me, I think maybe 3-4 years later, I was 16 and I was playing Coach Famulak's son, who was a year older than me, and I played him in a game. My team ended up winning, and then about 6 months later, we started to have more in-depth conversations. My dad came up with me on a visit, and I committed at 16 here. It was probably 2016, 2017 year, I believe. And yeah, ever since then, I've been here.
Yeah, wow, it's a crazy story. And especially for you, a really unique experience when you were able to play at World Juniors. Just talk about that experience wearing the United States colors. And I mean, I can't even imagine what that would have felt like just to play for your home country.
Yeah, I mean, the years maybe 10 months before that, we played in the World Junior A Challenge, and that was super awesome. We played that in Dawson Creek, Canada, and that was my first time wearing the jersey. And I remember hearing the national anthem. We were playing Canada in the opening game of the tournament, and I remember just feeling like chills standing on the blue line, like hearing the national anthem. And it was just like, this is something bigger than like just this team, right? It's way bigger than that, and this means a lot more. And having that USA on your shirt and walking around, and even the team apparel, the team jacket, it just feels different, right? You're representing your country, and I think it's every hockey player's dream. I remember thinking about that laying in bed at night when I was 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
After you watch Miracle, right? It's my favorite move ever. And like, that's the only thing I ever really wanted to make sure I accomplished, was representing my country.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, you have to bring Kurt Russell on the show a little bit. Maybe get a little tandem going.
Man. Legs feed the wolf. Some of them are escaping me, but what were some of the names of the guys that are on the team? Because there's some pretty big names that are.
Yeah, so we had like Zegras and Caulfield. We had Jake Sanderson. Kaliev, Turcotte. I mean, we were Beniers. Our team was loaded top to bottom. I mean, I think a lot of the media portrayed it as Canada's tournament to lose. I think they had every player on the team was a first rounder in the NHL. But I think internally with that squad, I think we knew how good we were. And I think obviously the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, certainly.
Where is the medal at?
It's actually at home. My parents got it framed along with the jersey. So yeah, it's just hanging up in my room at home.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's so cool. Almost like not necessarily a shrine, but something you'll never forget. For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. And not to get too much into the other podcast realm, I mean, you guys can obviously check that out at Off the Ice with Brody and Beth. But off the ice a little bit, we hear that you obviously are very much connoisseur in television, and specifically big college football fan. And now it's certainly very interesting. Are you a Georgia Bulldogs fan then, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So what are you thinking of the chances right now for this year?
I mean, they're 45-1 in the last 46 games, 12-0. I would say it's hard to bet against them at this point in their dynasty, I think everyone would call it. So I believe in Kirby Smart and Carson Beck. So I believe they'll get the job done this week and make it fairly easy for the playoff committee. And I think most of the country probably thinks they'll make it fairly easy for the playoff committee.
All right. And going back to me and being a 10-year-old kid wishing to play for USA and stuff like that, what are some of the big goalie names that you looked up to when you were first starting out and kind of modeling your game after?
So like the first goalie I ever really watched was like Dominic Hasek. I remember my dad showing me videos on YouTube back in the day on our home computer, and I would watch them all the time. And he was always telling me, he's like, that's how you want to compete. That's how you want to compete around the net. And I'm like, okay. And then 2012 came around, like Jonathan Quick, that was his breakout year, and the Kings won the cup and all that. And that's the guy who I really looked up to when I was like 12 to 16, and like he was the best American goalie in the world at that time, and he still is he's a Hall of Famer and still playing. And so those are the kind of the guys I really looked up to and really wanted to not model my game after, but I wanted to model my mentality after.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry to cut you off, Brandon, but when kids are little and they're choosing a position, goalie is usually not the first one. Were you a guy who made the choice to go play goalie, or were you a guy who kind of got shoved in there when maybe you were kind of the emergency backup and it just stuck?
Yeah, I was the kind of the guy that was the emergency backup and kind of got stuck with it. I mean, I played throughout, like you play like house, local, travel hockey, whatever. And I was playing D and I was decent, and then like every once in a while we'd rotate goalies and I'd play in there. And my first ever game in goalie, I gave him like 9 goals, and I remember coming crying to my dad and being like, I'm never doing this again. And then like 2 years later, I ended up getting a little bit better at goalie as we rotated it around, and we had my Might travel team. I tried out, made it as a D. We didn't have a goalie though, and they're like, you want to hop in there? And I was like, sure. And I ended up being halfway decent at it, so it just kind of stuck.
All right. So there's the story of a 5-star recruit out of junior. Just got stuck in emergency goalie and never looked back. So very cool. But especially speaking of obviously the goalie room with you and Noah and obviously Joey as well, just talk about the work that you guys put in, because especially there's not a lot of teams in all of college hockey, let alone CSHA, that have these dominant 1-2 punches that they can throw between the pipes. And you and Noah certainly have brought that the last 3 years. Just talk about the work you guys put in together and how much you complement each other in the pipes.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. Like in football, you always hear about the quarterback room. I think it's similar with like the goalie room. Like you're built, like only one person's playing at a time. Like your ability to bounce ideas off each other, like talk about certain situations, how you would play a certain situation, how you would make a decision on something. Like that's where you need in goaltending, because we do goalie skates and all that, but goaltending is like split second decisions all the time. So I think for us to bounce ideas off each other, like you have to, because they're seeing the same looks you are. And sometimes our decision making process is a little different. And I think it's important we understand like, oh, I can do this, give each other ideas and stuff like that. So I think it's really important to have a great goalie room. And I think we've had that for the past 4 years I've been here.
Absolutely.
And I know I'm going to ask favorite moment, but I mean, I don't want you to say the gold medal winning, because I know that's probably the top one. But other than, college career and stuff like that, what's been your favorite moment being a college goalie?
I have to go with 2. I think us beating BG at BG in the playoffs and us sweeping Mankato last year at Mankato.
Yeah.
Because that Mankato series was Mankato had our number. We beat them the year before when they were number 1 at home. But then when we went there the past year, we beat them 2-1 the first night, 3-2 the second night. And I mean, Mankato speaks for themselves. I think they've had a dynasty for a number of years now. And for us to go in there and sweep a team like that on the road, like it was a huge moment for our program, and it really elevated us nationally and really elevated the confidence in the room. And I think that's how we built on that weekend for most of that year.
Absolutely. One last question for you, Logan. Appreciate you stopping by. We ask everybody we bring on the show, what's been your favorite thing, maybe not moment, but favorite thing about being at Ferris State and being a Bulldog?
My favorite moment, or my favorite thing about being a Bulldog at Ferris State, I think it's the community. I think with all the sports, I know a lot of players on other sports teams. I go to a lot of other sporting events, and I think the community built around the athletic department, I think it's great. Everybody really knows everyone. It's not a small school, but it's a smaller school. So I think the ability to interact with everyone and talk to everyone on a day-to-day basis with this big athletic complex that we all share, I think it's great. And I think it's great to know everyone. And I think the athletic department does a great job of setting us all up for success.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, Logan, thank you so much for coming on, man. First one to double dip, doing off the ice and behind the Bulldogs. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Big thanks to Logan Stein for stopping by and talking with us. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, make sure if you missed on any of the other interviews, check them out in the feed below on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, all the jazz. You can follow us at Behind the Bulldogs for more. And great. And as well, big thanks to our new partner and sponsor, Car Center. We're glad to have them along a ride, and hopefully you guys will take in tune of their services as we highly recommend them. They get it done the first time. Request the best. You can request the Car Center.
Yeah, we are a legit podcast now.
We are legit? It's so
legit.
Cool.
Yeah, so let's get in the rundown.
Absolutely.
Or I guess the recap, preview. I forgot what the name was.
The Ferris State Slate?
That's what it is. Hey. So let's get into it. Happening Thursday, the 30th, today, when we're recording this one, in about, 7 minutes?
Yeah,
Volleyball is going to be having the opening round of regional play against Hillsdale in St. Louis at 3:30. So you can check out ferrisstatebulldogs.com for the outcome of that one and also next week's episode.
Absolutely. And if they win, they will play at the semifinal round, 6 o'clock on Friday, which will be tomorrow. And as well, ice hockey begins their doubleheader against St. Thomas, 7:07 puck drop from Ingelglaben at home on Friday night as well.
Yeah, huge for the program. And then happening Saturday, closing out the action and opening up December for us all. Men's basketball is taking on Grace Christian at 3 o'clock in Wink Arena. Men's ice hockey has the second chapter of the doubleheader against St. Thomas at 6:07 p.m. And then if women's volleyball wins again and makes it to the regional final, they'll be playing at 8 o'clock in St. Louis. Let's hope for it. Crossing our fingers.
Fingers crossed for sure. That's going to do it for this episode. Subscribe, follow, and more. But until next time,
take care, everybody.